Welcome in everyone to the Balance Patch Cup in November 2025. I am June, joined by Keon.
I'm Keon Sion, and I'm very happy to be here casting with my friends for some great, good old fashioned New England VGC.
We have a phenomenal match planned for you here in round one, and we're just going to get right into it going over the teams.
Yeah,
We're going to start looking at Calvin Tobias's team,
yeah.
which,
We,
Keon, you said looks a little bit familiar to you.
yeah, I remember seeing at least a version of this team present in, I believe it was Lille Top 4. The Dondozo Tatsugiri it looks a little bit 222-esque, but there's a lot of strange synergies going on here. There's the Weavile and the Annihilate with the side beat up into Annihilate to enable Rage Fist, as well as other tech moves like Triple Axle for Sash Pokemon, knockoff general utility, followed by the Annihilate with Citrus Berry instead of a bulk up set going a little bit more offensive and disruptive, opting for close combat and taunt outside of the standard setup and drain punch. June, if you want to tackle the two next most fun mons.
Well, I don't know if I'd call them necessarily the most fun mons, but of course there's the Dondozo and the Tatsugiri, a classic duo in VGC that we've seen really since the inception of Scarlet and Violet. The Dondozo, nothing super fancy here. Wave Crash, Order Up, and Earthquake. And with the curly form Tatsugiri, that Order Up is going to give Dondozo an attack boost every time it lands successfully into an opposing Pokemon. Important to note here the Tatsugiri not holding the Choice Scarf or the Focus Sash like it often does on these Dondozo compositions, because both of those items are taken up by other Pokemon, holding Safety Goggles. Because, classic strategy into a Dondozo, KO the Dondozo, put the Tatsugiri to sleep with your Amoonguss. Not going to happen with this one. And then, of course, that Archaludon Pelipper, I don't think we need to talk too much about those two at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, I think the Scarf Pelipper is a really interesting choice because there are a lot of interesting situations that it can put you in between the U-turn pivot potential for the Dondozo Tatsugiri mode, or even something like switching into the Archaludon to catch a beat up from the Weavile, and the Scarf Tailwind as well, which makes things awkward for about one turn, but then the offense just happens to overwhelm the opponent anyways. So I think this is a really interestingly constructed team, and I'm looking forward to see what Calvin does to this against Liam.
Yeah, and we're going to take a look at Liam McDonald's team on the other side, another staple of the New England VGC scene, and using their signature Pokemon right there in the first position, that Sneasler. Now, a little bit different from what Liam is kind of known for in the local scene, not using the Sword Stance set that they are so commonly used, now just using the Grassy Seed with 3 attacks, Close Combat, Dire Claw, and Acrobatics, not sacrificing any form of coverage on that Sneasler, of course paired with the Rillaboom to activate the Grassy Seed, Rillaboom packing high horsepower to hit something like the Archaludon on the other side as opposed to something like the U-turn that we'll sometimes see.
Yeah.
And then, classic Incineroar Golden Go for a couple of more unique picks.
Yeah, and I would say one thing, talking about the kind of intricacies of the matchup dynamic, the Mirror Herb on Incineroar is going to be really interesting going into the Defiant Annihilate. If you switch that in and you lower the stat, it only copies the +2 boost. So then Incineroar emerges with +2 attack, the Annihilate emerges with +1 attack. Obviously, it can use close combat, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And then, of course, the last two Pokemon, Komao-o going for an Iron Defense Body Press set with Flamethrower to hit those pesky Steel types and a Fire Terra, and Basculegion, the Terra Water adaptability Choice Scarf version with very strong Wave Crashes that are going to be essentially banded twice over if Liam can take advantage of the rain that Calvin will set with the Pelipper.
That's if Calvin wants to set the rain at all. Looking at this matchup, I don't see a lot on Liam's side that really loves to sit in front of a commander boosted Dondozo.
Yeah.
You've got the Rillaboom that'll hit it super effectively with grass type moves before it terastallizes, but outside of that, with the unaware ability for the Dondozo, the Iron Defense boost from Komao-o, not doing anything, the Nasty Plot boost from Golden Go, not doing anything, you really might have to just really rely on that Sneasler, which, again, has its +1 defense from the Grassy Seed, boost ignored by Dondozo's ability, and the Rillaboom to beat that mode on Calvin's side.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to be seeing a lot of Dire Claws fly this set. especially as the Mirror Herb, although it copies the Omni Boost, it won't matter because the Dundozo doesn't care if you're +2 and everything. To it, you're just the same old cat. But here we are getting into game 1. All right. We see the Basque Legion and Rillaboom lead from Liam, and Calvin actually opting for the rain mode, leading Pelipper and Archaludon off the bat.
Wow, that's an immediate Pelipper Archaludon for Calvin, giving the rain to the adaptability Choice Scarf Basque Legion on Liam's side. Pokemon that can dish out a ton of damage, even to resisted targets with something like that Wave Crash. That the targets that's looking down on the other side.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see the speed interactions between the Basque Legion and the Pelipper here, as they're both Choice Scarf, and the Basque Legion, of course, opting for adaptability over Swift Swim. These will be 2 Scarf Mons at around the same speed tier, so it'll be interesting to see if the Basque instead opts for some more bulk over the speed.
Yeah, and just an immediate flip turn from the Basque Legion. Liam deciding, yes, the Basque Legion loves to be in the rain. Doesn't love to be in the rain in front of an Archaludon that can click a, Electric Shot unabated at this point. And not wanting to click a Fake Out of the Archaludon to give it a free stamina boost this early in the contest.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that Liam has to be mindful of here is managing how many times you hit the Archaludon before you get that end game in which you can just launch the massively boosted adaptability Last Respects into it. As we see the Incineroar come out, hopefully catching something like that Electro Shot.
As it's a Hurricane from the Choice Scarf Pelipper into Rillaboom,
Oh.
and it's a one-hit KO because of the critical hit. Usually, a Rillaboom, especially with the Assault Vest, is going to be trained to survive an attack like that from Pelipper. Not when it's getting an extra 50% boost because of the crit.
Yeah, absolutely. The Scarf Pelipper usually doesn't do as much damage as opposed to something like this Terra Stellar or the Life Orb, but it just gets that KO. As Electro Shot does go into Incineroar, another critical hit!
Oh my goodness, and you can just see it in Liam's face on the player cam. A truly ridiculous first turn here in round 1. The double critical hit, and now Calvin just has a free +1 special attack on the the Archaludon, and a 4-2 Pokemon lead staring down this Basque Legion, which, because of the Choice Scarf, has to lock into a move for the rest of the game, not knowing the final 2 Pokemon on Calvin's side, and now the reveal of the Sneasler in the back, which will at least be the fastest thing on the field.
Yeah, and you get a pretty safe KO into the Basque Legion, or at least very solid damage into it this turn, depending on Liam's targeting. If you just go for something like the Hurricane and Electro Shot double up, you don't have to play any mind games with a Protect, as there is the Choice Scarf of choice. And Calvin doesn't even need to play defensively, try and force a pivot of some sort. You can just see what the Basque Legion chooses to lock into should it survive through the turn, and from there decide how you want to pilot your last 2 Pokemon, whether it's the Dondozo and Tatsugiri, or if it is just the Annihilate and Weavile mode, as we see a Terastallization come out from Liam.
Yeah, the Terra flying on the Sneasler makes a little bit of sense here. If you are not going to target this Pelipper this turn, you want to make sure that, as you know, the opposing Pelipper is Choice Scarf locked into the Hurricane as well. Make sure that you do not faint to that this turn. The Archaludon does survive the close combat immediately into it, gets a stamina boost for all 5 HP that it has left, and the Last Respects will clean that up pretty cleanly.
Yeah, that's a really solid play from Liam, I think, identifying that nothing can really take that double up even on the switch-in, and recognizing how problematic the Archaludon is. They achieved their goal of getting the boosted Last Respects, but at the cost of getting both Mons crit turn 1. So we'll see if they can continue to navigate their way out of this mid-game as the Dondozo switches in.
Yep, and we do get to see that the Hurricane from Pelipper does just about half of Basque Legion's HP, maybe healed up just a little bit too much for Hurricane to be a 2-hit KO this following turn. But looking at what Calvin locked in this turn, I don't think we're going to see a Hurricane into that Basque Legion, and I don't think we need to.
Yeah, I think the way that Calvin is playing is very clean in making sure that they don't overstep after having taken such a heavy advantage. But if Liam calls out everything with utmost precision, there can be a really interesting endgame that comes out of here. As the Tatsugiri swaps in for the Pelipper, soaking up any last respects or acrobatics that could go into that slot, and giving the Dondozo that Omni boost to take those physical hits all that much better in this endgame.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see some of these speed interactions too. Of course, you assumed the Sneasler with the double speed from the Unburden ability is going to be faster, but the Basque Legion also still outspeeding a Dondozo +2 speed. Makes a little bit of sense if it's a slower Dondozo, which will fire back, really winning that damage trade quite handily on Calvin's side.
Yeah, the +2 Wave Crash and Rain really does care not for a resisted hit. It will get there. Your Basque Legion will go down, and it's up to the Sneasler in this 3 versus 1 to maybe get something done with this Dire Claw.
Yeah, where there's a Dire Claw, there's a way. We've heard it for, years at this point.
Yeah, there's a very precise end game that Liam has to play to. It's not easy, but if you can get some lucky Dire Claws onto this Dondozo, find a way to perfectly stall out the Rain with Protect, and then win the 2v1 against the inaccurate Pelipper and the Tatsugiri, there is a way, but it's definitely going to be challenging, as we just see the acrobatics not even going for a Dire Claw, maybe hoping for a critical hit, as it does a measly 49 damage.
Yeah, and fairly honest endgame from the Sneasler, as it'll just take its turn going back to its Pokeball itself, and a pretty commanding first game win for Calvin, but we do have to acknowledge what happened on that first turn, certainly putting things in their favor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the turn 1 double crit really just put Liam on such a back foot that unless you get every single micro of every single play exactly right, even then you might not even get a chance to pull it through. But especially on the turn where the Tatsugiri came in, I think that was just it. You had to go for some sort of a Dire Claw or some sort of crit onto the Dondozo slot to even have a chance in that endgame.
Yeah, it really, at that point in the game, it's all about making reads. Do you think the Tatsugiri is going to switch in that turn? If so, you have to double into the Dondozo. Of course, Liam playing it a little bit more conservatively in that space, splitting their damage between the two targets, kind of hedging their bets, for lack of a better phrase, on the Pelipper, knowing that the Pelipper is going to be slower in whatever endgame than either the Sneasler or the Basque Legion.
Yeah.
But once the Dondozo got boosted, there really just wasn't much that Liam could do about it with those two physical attackers in the endgame.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is that we didn't really assess the Pelipper Rain mode to be that strong coming from Calvin, and it would be interesting to see how something like that plays out without the double crit, to see if it would be just as smooth from all of those water mons. As looking at Liam's team, the only way that you can really adapt out of all of those water mons is the Rillaboom, which didn't stand a chance against the Pelipper. So maybe it'll get more of a fighting chance this time around, or we could even see the Weavile come as an adaptation to that.
Yeah, and to Calvin's credit, the turn 1 play, I think, still works even without the critical hits. You get all that damage on the Rillaboom, and if it does go for, say, a Wood Hammer to try to take out the Pelipper on the other side, you're still going to be able to get that KO on the Rillaboom because of the Wood Hammer recoil. Calvin decides just running it back with that Rain mode, the Pelipper and the Archaludon. As a little bit of a mix-up for Liam, it's going to be Rillaboom and Sneasler on their side.
Yeah, I think leading with something that's more explicitly offensive early game and crucially can outspeed that Pelipper and put some of the variance back into its favor. The lead of Sneasler and Rillaboom is really strong here, as it kind of forces the game to last a little bit longer than it did last time.
Yeah, well, more or less.
Yeah.
We did at least get to see the Archaludon on Calvin's side will survive a close combat from the Sneasler. Not going for that play, though. Grassy Glide plus Acrobatics gets the KO. Now, for Liam's side, while this Archaludon does get a free turn just to click this Electro Shock.
It's really interesting to see these kinds of plays, because you can see in Game 1, Liam's adaptation is just very clearly, I do not want to deal with this Pelipper anymore, just getting it out, even trading the Sneasler for it, which, frankly, I'm quite shocked that was just a one-hit knockout right there. So trading the Sneasler for the Pelipper, Sneasler was doing a little bit in the one turn it gets to Dire Claw the Dondozo before it gets wave crashed, but I'd say this is a pretty solid trade, at least preserving health on the Rillaboom.
I can understand where you're coming from there. I think losing the Sneasler turn 1, which again, I'm surprised that that KO happened too, and looking at Calvin's reaction in the player cam, I think they might have been a little bit shocked at the fact that Sneasler fainted. I think that does not bode well for the Dondozo mode that may be in the back on Calvin's side. Now, really nothing is stopping Calvin from just clicking the Terra Grass button on the Dondozo, not worried about the Rillaboom, not terribly worried about the Basculegion, and certainly not worried about an Incineroar in the rain once the Dondozo gets a little bit boosted from the Tatsugiri jumping in its mouth. You know, I think this is just Dondozo's game to lose once again.
I would say that one of the things here that I think Calvin is doing a great job of realizing is the fact that the Sneasler is gone means that with enough hits into the Archaludon, it really can't be stopped anymore. The fighting type coverage was really important to deal with that Archaludon, and with the Pokemon that were brought last game, if it's something similar with the Basculegion in the back, these are all physical attackers, and with the right positioning and the incorrect sequencing, I guess, from Liam, this Archaludon can get really out of control. So it's about managing both the threat of the Commander-boosted Dondozo as well as that beefed-up Archaludon.
Yeah, and it really makes you wonder what, with Incineroar coming out on this turn, which will be terastallizing into a Ghost type, really makes you wonder what is the fourth Pokemon on Liam's side. It's likely going to be that Basculegion once more, but if it is that Golden Go, then if Liam can find a way through Dondozo, then Archaludon becomes a little bit easier to deal with because of the Golden Go. But no, be focusing down this Archaludon. Wow!
Ooh.
With the high horsepower, giving the stamina boost because of Mirror Herb to Incineroar. That's a cool interaction.
It is cool until you realize it functionally means nothing. The Dondozo doesn't care, and now Body Press can't even hit the Incineroar after the terastallization to Ghost.
Okay.
We see the Archaludon's Electro Shot go into the Incineroar, living, crucially, and going for the Parting Shot.
Yeah, so now a +1 defense on this Archaludon, +2 special attack. We did get confirmation of the speed order there to the Rillaboom faster than Archaludon, which is faster itself than the Incineroar. And now we do get to see it is the Basculegion as the fourth Pokemon on Liam's side.
I will say that was a really heads-up play from Liam, realizing that with the Basculegion in the back, the threat here is not the Dondozo, but instead the Archaludon, going for the high horsepower, getting the damage when it counts instead of going for something with minimal damage, boosting up the defense like like what would be the Fake Out coming out from the Incineroar, going to mitigate it as quick as possible as we see Basculegion just swap right back out to that Incineroar.
Yes, but again, I don't think we can say enough about this Dondozo still being a threat. Yes, it's at -2 attack right now. Tatsugiri is switching in. It's going to get back up to neutral. But the Terra Grass on this Dondozo, looking at the moves available for Liam's Pokemon, I just don't see a very clear-cut way through this without some critical hits on Liam's side.
Yeah, it's a really risky gamble you take when you come to a Dondozo and Archaludon fight bringing 4 physical attackers. It's going to take a lot of precise positioning and damage targeting in order to break through not 1, but 2 of those physically defensive threats, as we do see the terastallization come out from the Dondozo.
Yeah, turning into that grass type. Really the only question here is what is Rillaboom going to do? Who did Rillaboom target? We saw, because we do get the benefit of Calvin's player cam, our point of view is that the order up going into the Incineroar. Now for all of our friends keeping count at home, as I've been using my fingers and toes, a +1 attack for Dondozo, +2 in all other stats, and the high horsepower whiffing into the Tatsugiri slot.
Yeah, and I think this is just a point in the game where it's like, what do you do? Even if you get a critical hit with the Basculegion, the Last Respect's adaptability 150 base power, I think won't even get there. Let's see it. Yeah, 70 damage. It would have done a good amount of damage, but not nearly enough as the Dondozo launches another order up, boosting itself back up to the +2 it so rightfully deserves.
And the Wood Hammer really just bouncing off of Dondozo at this point too. Grassy terrain will end here shortly. This is either the last turn or maybe there's one more turn of it, similar with the Rain on the same counters.
Yeah.
As we do see the recovery for all these Pokemon. Likely going to be one final turn of both Rain and Grassy Terrain. This is an interesting decision to protect, though. Of course, it might seem obvious, a Dondozo with leftovers just took some damage, wants to get all the recovery it can. It gets the free leftovers, it gets the free Grassy Terrain. But if this is the last turn of Rain, might be the last turn that Dondozo will be able to KO the Basculegion from this range with an order, with a Wave Crash.
Yeah.
Even resisted the Wave Crash, going to do more damage than the Order Up into the Basculegion. And now, even though Dondozo is at, I just said it, it's at +1.
It's at +2 now after the second
+2 after the
order,
second Order Up. I'm not sure if we're going to see a KO with either the Order Up or the Wave Crash into the Basculegion this turn.
Let's see it. It just hangs on. Okay. And I think the Woodhammer is not going to do much anymore, about maybe 20 damage. Okay. That's solid enough. It puts it in a position where after a protect, you may just be able to break through the Dondozo with the Last Respects and the Woodhammer, but what exactly is Rillaboom and Basculegion going to do in this endgame? The Last Respects is going to be strong, but it's a war of attrition that I think Liam's starting to run a little bit out of steam on that Basculegion.
Yeah, it's really just, will Basculegion be able to knock out the Dondozo before the Dondozo can knock out the Basculegion? And based on the damage that we've seen Last Respects do up to this point, and with where Dondozo's at in its HP pool, seems like we just need a critical hit for this Last Respects. Comes out in the Dondozo, does not get the critical hit. Order Up is going to pick up this KO into Basculegion, and now we're looking at, this is a +3 Dondozo now staring down the Rillaboom.
Yeah, +3, +4, something like that, and the Rillaboom not even being able to pick up the Dondozo just goes to show how tough these physically defensive threats have become towards the end of this metagame, with all of these strong balance pieces being without any Urshifu, you kind of can't really do much into the critical hits. Basculegion can only fill his shoes so much.
Yeah, and in Regulation H, surprisingly a physical attacking format based on what we've seen, your Dragonites, your Sneaslers, your Rillabooms, your Incineroars, the list goes on. So it really makes a lot of sense that these super physically defensive Pokemon, these Pokemon that can boost their defenses very easily, the Dondozos, your Archaludons, will see a lot of success, especially late in the format, once you know exactly what the Dondozo and Archaludon need to beat, that you can just tailor-make those sets.
Yeah, and one thing I will say about Calvin's play there is I think it was a really masterful way in leveraging the grassy terrain against the Rillaboom. The Woodhammers into the Terra Grass were really not doing enough damage, and it was in fact the precise protecting turns that ended up making the difference and allowing the Dondozo to live at that end game. So it was really well played from both trainers, especially Liam, not giving up after that really unfortunate turn one, and I know we're going to see more of them later on in this tournament.
Absolutely. And speaking of, we're going to take a short break here before round 2. Stick with us for more Pokemon VGC action here at the Balance Patch